January 1945, East Prussia. The forest is silent except for falling snow. A German soldier, barely 20, exhausted, filthy, moves between the birch trees. He doesn't know he's being watched, doesn't know that 400 meters away, a 19-year-old girl lies motionless in a snowbank, her finger resting gently against the trigger of a Mosin-Nagant rifle. Roza Shanina's breathing is shallow, controlled, her heartbeat steady. She's done this 58 times before, 58 confirmed kills, 58 men who never saw her coming. The German pauses, lights a cigarette. The tiny flame gives her the reference point she needs. She exhales, squeezes. The rifle cracks. The echo rolls through the trees. The cigarette falls into the snow, still burning. 59. But this story isn't about numbers. It's about a girl from a village so remote it didn't appear on most maps who became one of the deadliest snipers of the Second World War. A girl who wrote poetry, who loved to dance, who dreamed of becoming a teacher, and who, by the age of 20, would be dead, killed in the same frozen forests where she'd hunted the men who destroyed her world. Before we continue, if you enjoy cinematic deep dives into history like this, please consider subscribing. It really helps us bring forgotten stories to life. To understand Roza Shanina, you must first understand where she came from, Iedma, a village in the Arkhangelsk region of northern Russia. Population, barely 300, no electricity, no running water, wooden houses clustered around a single dirt road, forests stretching in every direction, dense and dark and endless. This was Siberian Russia, remote, harsh, beautiful in its severity, where winter lasted 8 months and survival meant self-reliance. Rosa was born in 1924, the sixth of 8 children in a peasant family. Her father, Yegor, was a logger. Her mother, Anna, tended a small plot and raised children in a 2-room house heated by a single stove. There was nothing extraordinary about her childhood. She milked cows, carried water from the well, helped with the harvest. Like every child in Edma, she learned early that life was hard, that comfort was rare, and that you endured because there was no alternative. But Rosa was curious, restless. Whilst other children accepted their village boundaries, she dreamed of something larger. At 14, against her parents' wishes, she walked 200 kilometers to the nearest railway town, Arkhangelsk, to attend school. She lived with relatives, worked nights cleaning offices to pay for books, studied by candlelight. By 1941, she'd qualified as a kindergarten teacher. She was 17 years old. Her future seemed clear. Return to the villages, teach small children, marry, raise a family. Then on 22nd June 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union. 3 million men, 3,000 tanks, 7,000 artillery pieces, the largest military operation in history, launched without warning at dawn. Within weeks, entire Soviet armies had been encircled and destroyed. The Germans advanced 50 kilometers a day. Minsk fell, Smolensk fell, Kiev fell. By September, Leningrad was under siege and German reconnaissance units were within sight of Moscow's suburbs. The Soviet Union was hemorrhaging territory, industry, and men at a rate that seemed unsustainable. Stalin issued Order 227, not one step back. Soldiers who retreated without orders would be shot, but retreat continued. Because the Red Army of 1941 wasn't ready, officers had been purged in the late 1930s, equipment was obsolete, training was inadequate, and the German Wehrmacht was, at that moment, the most effective fighting force on the planet. For Roza Shanina, the war was an abstraction until it wasn't. In 1942, her eldest brother, Mikhail, was killed at the siege of Leningrad. He was 23. His body was never recovered. Then her younger brother, Fyodor, was reported missing in action near Stalingrad. Missing meant almost certainly dead, though the family clung to hope for months. 2 brothers, gone. Roza wrote in her diary, "I cannot remain behind. I must go." She applied to join the Red Army. She was 18. They rejected her. Too young, too small, no military experience. She applied again, rejected. She wrote letters to local party officials, to military recruitment boards, to anyone who might listen. And finally, in 1943, she was accepted, not for frontline service, but for training at the Central Women's Sniper School in Podolsk, just outside Moscow. This wasn't charity. By 1943, the Soviet Union was desperate. Millions of men were dead. The Red Army needed bodies. And if women could shoot, they would be trained to kill. Roza Shanina arrived at sniper school in April 1943. She was one of 1,285 women who would graduate from Soviet sniper programs during the war, not because the USSR was progressive, but because it was bleeding to death. The training was brutal. 6 months, dawn to dusk, learning to shoot at 400 meters, then 600, then 800, learning to account for wind, temperature, humidity, learning to remain motionless for hours in snow, mud, or summer heat. They're learning to kill. Most critically, they learned patience. A sniper's greatest weapon isn't the rifle, it's stillness. The ability to wait, to watch, to become part of the landscape whilst the enemy moves through your crosshairs, unaware. Roza excelled. She had a natural gift for marksmanship, steady hands, excellent vision, and something harder to teach, the ability to shut out emotion and focus entirely on the task. But she also had something else, anger. Her instructors noted it in reports. She wasn't reckless, but she was driven. Every training exercise, she pushed harder than required. Every target she treated as though it were the man who'd killed her brothers. By October 1943, she'd graduated top of her class, confirmed as a sniper with the 184th Rifle Division, and shipped to the Kalinin front, where Army Group Center was trying to hold a defensive line against Soviet offensives aimed at reclaiming Belorussia. She was 19 years old. If you're still watching, you're clearly a history lover. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next story. The first time Roza Shanina killed a man, she wrote about it in her diary. On December 1943, near Vitebsk, snow falling, visibility poor. She'd been positioned in a bombed-out farmhouse, 3rd floor, watching a German supply route. She'd been there since before dawn, 6 hours without moving, without eating, barely breathing. Then, through her scope, a figure appeared, German infantryman, walking casually, rifle slung over his shoulder. He thought he was safe. She tracked him for 20 seconds, calculating distance, windage, the slight elevation difference. She fired. He dropped. That night in her diary, she wrote, "I've killed a fascist, I'm glad, but I don't feel the way I thought I would." What she expected, we don't know. Triumph, perhaps. Satisfaction, justice. What she felt, she described as emptiness. Over the following months, that emptiness became routine. By April 1944, her confirmed kill count had reached 12. By June, 26. By September, 43. She operated as part of a sniper pair with another woman, Kaleria Petrova. They worked in shifts, one observing, one resting. When targets appeared, they coordinated. Kaleria would spot. Roza would shoot. The system was devastatingly effective. German soldiers began to fear daylight. They moved at night. They avoided open ground. But the Soviet snipers adapted. They learned the routes, the habits, the moments of carelessness, and Roza became quietly famous. Red Army newspapers began publishing her name. Roza Shanina, 38 fascists eliminated. Her photograph appeared in propaganda leaflets. She was young, photogenic, a perfect symbol for Soviet resilience. The attention made her uncomfortable. She wrote in her diary, "They write about me as though I'm some kind of hero. I'm just doing my job, like everyone else." But she wasn't like everyone else. Most snipers operated with caution. Take the shot, reposition, avoid detection. Roza was more aggressive. She took risks. She'd engage multiple targets in quick succession, something most snipers avoided because it revealed position. Her signature technique became the double tap, firing twice in rapid succession, hitting two different targets before either could react. It required extraordinary skill. The Mosin-Nagant was a bolt-action rifle. After firing, she had to work the bolt, eject the spent cartridge, chamber a new round, reacquire the target, and fire again, all within seconds, whilst managing recoil and maintaining accuracy. She could do it in under 3 seconds. German units learned to recognize her work. When soldiers dropped in pairs, they knew Shanina. But fame had consequences. By late 1944, Roza was exhausted. She'd been in combat for over a year. She'd seen friends killed. She'd killed more men than she could easily count, and the war was grinding on, month after month, with no end in sight. She requested a transfer to a less dangerous posting, teaching perhaps, training new snipers. The request was denied. She was too valuable, too effective, too symbolic. The Red Army couldn't afford to lose her, not to death, but not to reassignment either. So she stayed. And in January 1945, her unit was ordered into East Prussia for the final Soviet offensive into Germany itself. The East Prussian offensive began on 13th of January 1945. 2 million Soviet soldiers, 4,000 tanks, 25,000 artillery pieces. The objective: smash through German defenses, reach the Baltic coast, and cut off Army Group Center from any hope of retreat. This wasn't liberation, this was conquest, and it was brutal. German civilians fled westward in panic. Thousands froze to death on the roads. Soviet troops, remembering what the Germans had done in Russia, showed little mercy. Roza's unit, the 184th Rifle Division, was part of the assault on the town of Richau, a small settlement near the Baltic coast. The fighting was vicious, house to house, room to room. German defenders knew they were fighting for survival now, not for Hitler, but for time. Time for civilians to escape, time for anything but Soviet occupation. On 27th of January, Roza was positioned in a church tower overlooking the main road into Richau. She'd been there since dawn. It was minus 15 degrees. Her fingers were numb despite her gloves. Below, a German counterattack was forming. Infantry, a few tanks, desperate, disorganized. She engaged. First target, an officer directing troops, 350 meters, clean hit. Second target, machine gunner setting up position, 280 meters, hit. Third target, radio operator, 400 meters, hit. Her spotter, Kaleria, whispered, "They've seen us, we need to move." Roza fired twice more. Then German mortars found their range. The first shell hit the church roof. The second exploded 10 meters from their position. Shrapnel screamed through the air. Kaleria was hit, leg wound, severe bleeding. Roza grabbed her, dragged her down the narrow stairwell, through the rubble-strewn nave, out into the frozen street. They made it 50 meters before German infantry appeared. Roza dropped Kaleria behind a stone wall, unslung her rifle, returned fire. She killed 3 before a Soviet infantry squad arrived and drove the Germans back. Kaleria survived. She was evacuated. She lived to see peace. Roza refused evacuation. She returned to her unit that evening. She wrote in her diary, "Kaleria is safe. That's what matters." And if you're enjoying this deep dive, a quick reminder, subscribing helps us keep making stories like this every week. The final entry in Roza Shanina's diary is dated 24th of January 1945. She wrote, "I wish the war would end soon, and I'm tired, but until it does, I'll keep fighting for Mikhail, for Fyodor, for everyone who can't." 4 days later, she was dead. 28th of January 1945, near the village of Richau. The fighting had intensified. German forces, trapped and desperate, were mounting suicidal counterattacks to buy time. Roza's unit was holding a position near the riverbank. Soviet artillery pounded German lines. German artillery returned fire. The ground shook continuously. Around midday, a German assault broke through the Soviet line. Infantry, close quarters, chaos. Roza grabbed a submachine gun. Her rifle was useless at this range and joined the defensive line. Witnesses, soldiers who survived, reported she fought for nearly 20 minutes, firing, reloading, moving between positions, shouting orders, despite having no command authority. Then German artillery opened up. Shells rained down. One landed directly in the Soviet position. Roza was struck by shrapnel, multiple wounds, abdomen, chest, severe. Medics reached her within minutes. They tried, but the wounds were catastrophic. She died en route to the field hospital. She was 20 years old. Her body was buried in a mass grave near Richau. Later, after the war, she was reburied with military honors in the town of Znamensk. Her final confirmed kill count, 59. Some sources claim higher, 75 and even 90, but Soviet records officially credit her with 59. 59 men who had mothers, who had written letters home, who had thought on that last day that they might survive. 59 kills in 14 months of combat, and then nothing. A girl from a village no one had heard of, gone. The Soviet Union made Roza Shanina a hero of the Soviet Union posthumously. Her name appeared in history books. Her photograph hung in schools, but for decades, her story was simplified. She became a symbol, no brave Soviet woman defending the motherland. The propaganda version left out the complexity, the fear, the exhaustion, the diary entries where she admitted she was tired of killing. It wasn't until the 1990s, when her diary was fully published, that the real Roza Shanina emerged, not a symbol, a person. She loved dancing. She wrote poetry, clumsy, earnest verses about snow and home. She missed her mother desperately. She worried about her younger sisters. She dreamed of returning to teaching after the war, and she killed 59 men. Those two realities coexisted in the same person. That's the part propaganda could never capture. War doesn't transform ordinary people into heroes. It traps ordinary people in situations where survival requires doing extraordinary things. Some of those things are brave, some are horrifying, most are both. Roza Shanina wasn't exceptional because she was fearless. She was exceptional because she was terrified and did it anyway. Every sniper who interviewed after the war, Soviet, German, American, said the same thing. The hardest part isn't pulling the trigger, it's living with what you've done, the faces you remember, and the moments you can't forget. Roza's diary suggests she understood this. She didn't celebrate her kills. She recorded them methodically, like someone keeping track of a debt she owed. 59 fascists eliminated, 59 brothers avenged, 59 reasons to keep going when every part of her wanted to stop. But what haunts the story isn't the killing, it's the waste. Roza Shanina should have become a teacher. She should have married, raised children, grown old in a village where people knew her name because she'd taught their kids to read. Instead, she died at 20 in a frozen field in East Prussia, defending a town whose name most people can't pronounce, in a war that had already been won, because by January 1945, Germany's defeat was inevitable. The Red Army was 100 kilometers from Berlin. The Western Allies were across the Rhine. There was no question of outcome, only timing, and yet the fighting continued. because wars don't end when defeat becomes certain. They end when the machinery stops, when enough people have died that surrender becomes possible. Roza Shanina died in that gap between inevitability and acknowledgement, between we've lost and we surrender. She was one of 27 million Soviet citizens who died in the Second World War, a statistic so large it becomes meaningless. But she wasn't a statistic. She was a girl who wrote bad poetry and loved to dance and happened to be very, very good at killing people. If you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person we make these videos for. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. There's a photograph of Roza Shanina taken in 1944. She's smiling, wearing her uniform, her sniper's badge visible on her chest. She looks impossibly young. That photograph circulated in Soviet newspapers. It was meant to inspire, to show that even women could fight, that the motherland was defended by all its children. But look closely at her eyes. There's something behind the smile, something tired, something that's seen too much. That's the part the propaganda missed. Roza Shanina wasn't a hero because she killed 59 men. She was a hero because she survived, emotionally, psychologically, long enough to keep doing it. Because every morning she woke up and chose to continue, knowing what it cost, knowing what it was doing to her. That's the real bravery, not the shooting, the enduring. Modern militaries study snipers obsessively, the psychology, the training, the aftermath. What they've found is troubling. Snipers have among the highest rates of PTSD of any combat role because, unlike infantry who fight at close range in the chaos of battle, snipers see their targets clearly. They watch them, study them, learn their habits, and then they kill them deliberately from safety. It's intimate in a way most combat isn't. You see the person you're about to kill. Sometimes you see them for hours before you pull the trigger. You watch them laugh, smoke, read a letter from home, and then you end them. Roza Shanina did that 59 times at 19 years old. We don't know what that did to her. Her diary doesn't say. Maybe she didn't have words for it. Maybe she did, but knew the censors would never allow those entries to be published. What we know is that she never stopped, never refused an order, never broke down, at least not publicly. And then she died before the war ended, before she had to come home and try to become a kindergarten teacher again, before she had to reconcile the girl who taught children to read with the woman who'd killed 59 men. Maybe that's the real tragedy. Not that she died young, but that she died before she could discover whether she could ever be whole again. January 1945, East Prussia, a forest near Richau. Somewhere in those woods, a German soldier never saw Roza Shanina, never knew she was there, never knew in his last second that a girl from a village 2,000 kilometers away, a girl who dreamed of teaching children, was the one who killed him. 59 times that moment repeated, 59 men who didn't see it coming. And then, in the chaos of a close-quarters battle, Roza Shanina didn't see it coming either. Shrapnel, artillery, the random violence of war. She died the way most soldiers die, not heroically, not in some grand final stand, but suddenly, senselessly, because she happened to be in the wrong place when a shell landed. The war ended 3 months later. Her mother received a letter in May 1945. Your daughter died defending the motherland. Standard language, the same letter sent to millions of families. Anna Shanina never saw her daughter's grave, never visited the Znamensk. She died in 1968 in the same village where Roza was born. Roza's sisters survived the war. They married, had children, grew old. One of them, in an interview in the 1990s, said, Roza was the smartest of us. She should have done great things. Instead, she killed Germans and died. That's the summary. Brutal, true, but it misses something essential. Roza Shanina didn't choose the war, she chose to fight in it. There's a difference. She could have stayed in Arkhangelsk, worked in a factory, survived quietly. No one would have blamed her. But her brothers were dead, her country was invaded, and she decided that doing nothing was worse than doing something dangerous. That choice cost her everything, but it was her choice. And perhaps that's the only redemption available in war. Not that violence is justified, but that sometimes people choose it anyway for reasons they believe matter. Roza Shanina believed her brothers mattered, that stopping the Wehrmacht mattered, that defending people who couldn't defend themselves mattered. She was wrong about many things. Propaganda had filled her head with lies about heroism and glory. But she was right about that. It did matter, and she paid for that belief with her life. If this story moved you or made you think differently about history, please share it. These are the stories that deserve to be remembered, not because they're heroic, but because they're human, and we'll see you in the next one.